Hamatakiapi, Napechizapi, Chantewashte. Greetings, everyone. I just greeted you in my traditional Lakota language, which is just saying I greet each and one of you with an open heart and a warm handshake for being here. I see you as relatives, as brothers, as sisters in the struggle. And I want to tell a funny story. On the way here, my wife and I, we were talking in the car about this encampment and this particular movement. And she said, it's a morcha. And I was like, what's that mean? She said, let me Google it. And so she went on to Google Translate. And one of the first things that came up it said hostile demonstration against the government. And I kind of like laughed because I was like, that has to be a mistranslation. But if you think about the way that even you demonstrating for your rights, even arguing for your rights, is seen in this colonial racial language. I'm sure that you've heard of tribal politics. Parenbeer was very generous, and he said, I'm from the Lower Brule Sioux Nation, which is I'm actually from the Lower Brule Sioux tribe. They call us a tribe, and in the United States, they say that we have descended into tribalism. There's two factions who are fighting each other. You have the Democrats and the Republicans. And I laugh because I was like, we need more tribalism. We need more indigenous relationality because that language has been colonized. It's been used as a way to discredit us as people of peace, as people of justice. When we had our demonstrations in Standing Rock in 2016, the first thing that the federal government and the pipeline company did was they began to monitor Palestinians who were supporting our movement. Palestinians! The first thing they took a photo of when we put up an encampment to stop the construction of a pipeline through our territory. It was trespassing through our territory. The first thing they took a photo of was the Palestinian flag that we had flying because they wanted to criminalize us. They wanted to call us jihadis, that we were backed by this irrational, spiritual, religious tradition. But if you were in our encampments, every morning we awoke and prayed with the water. We gave thanks to Unchimaka, Grandmother Earth. Every demonstration we had was grounded in prayer, in our way of life. So they had to make something up and say that we were these religious extremists. But also, they wanted to discredit us because they wanted to say our allies are criminalizing us. That Palestinians, why the heck would Palestinians stand with Native people in South Dakota, in North Dakota? Why would Native people open the door for Palestinians? Why would that be one of the first alliances we make in our struggle to fight a pipeline? What does that have to do with climate politics? What does that have to do with protecting drinking water? Our name, Lakota, actually means friends, allies. That's what it means for us, to be in alliance and friendship, to make relatives with people, to make relations. And no people other than Palestinians understand what it's like to be under the boot of colonialism, to be under the boot of capitalism, of a pipeline company coming in, trying to destroy your land, literally digging up our graves, destroying our sacred sites. Imagine they tried to build a pipeline through a temple or through a church. The outrage that would cause. So of course we were angry. We had every right to be angry. But we're angry people of peace, if that makes sense. And I bring that story up because oftentimes in our movements, they ask us, well, why would you come and speak to Najawang? Well, they have good food, they're very beautiful people, they're very nice. I danced with some of you, I've gone to the picket line with some of you. It's because in this moment in time, your struggle is our struggle. And they teach you in these moments, even in the camps when we were at Standing Rock. Well, there were some of our, I'll just say it for what it is, our white liberal allies, our white liberal friends who are like, well, maybe we should not wear keffiyehs when we go out onto the front line. And the grandmas were saying, F that. Our Palestinian relatives were there for us when we went to the United Nations in the 1970s, and we will stand with them today, proud, because we know their struggle is our struggle. Because our relations are not vertical. We're not here to cry on the shoulder of the man who stole our land. We're not here to cry on the shoulder of the man who stole our wages, who stole our rights, who took away our livelihoods. Because that's not where power is. And we understood that in the camps. That power was lateral. It was horizontal. It was looking to other people, other nations, other movements that were in struggle. And I bring that up because for me, that's something that has always stuck with me. I remember, when we engage in community like this, when we create encampments, what's the first thing that you do? You have to find where people are going to go to the bathroom, where you're going to find food, who's going to stay in the tents, who's going to stay up all night and make sure that nobody messes with you, right? So right there, those show you the key ingredients of the kind of society that we're trying to build. How to create community, how to create senses of safety. Because we can't find it out here. The society that invited you, or the government that invited you here, is now trying to make your lives unsafe by deporting you. The same thing they did to us under the Obama administration in the United States. After the 2011 financial collapse crisis in the United States, the US economy was tanking. And so what did they do? They turned to indigenous lands to drill their way out of that crisis, to destroy our water, our livelihoods. When the Canadian economy was thrown into a crisis during COVID-19, what did they do? They brought in workers to work and to save the economy. You saved the economy. They should be thanking you. And now they want to deport you. They want to sacrifice you. They want to turn other people against you to say, well, actually, they don't belong here. We don't have housing. We don't have the resources. Countries that have literally robbed Native people and other nations throughout the world are now saying, well, we don't have enough, so you have to go home. It's an economy of enforced scarcity, artificial scarcity. Because we all know, we drive downtown and we see all the empty condos. We see all the empty apartments. This isn't an immigrant problem, this is a landlord problem. This is a problem of the ruling class, frankly. Because it's not everyday people out on the streets that are trying to kick you out of this country, that are trying to take away your rights and your livelihoods, that are stealing your wages. It's a class of people, and we have to be honest about that. I want to bring up one last example because it pertains to a lot of the struggles we find ourselves in right now with, I don't know if Canada is going through an election cycle. I live in the United States, and they're undergoing, I'm sure you've all heard of Trump, Harris, Trump, Harris, Democrat, Republicans. But I bring this up because I live in a state called Minnesota. Does anybody know where Minnesota is? Yeah. They say it's the, a province of Canada. They say it's very liberal, it's multicultural, it's so friendly. They say Minnesota nice. But Minnesota is a bastardization of our language. It actually means, the real word is Minnesota Makoche, which means land where the water reflects the sky. It incorporates the elements of who we are as Lakota people, as Ochete Shakomi people, people of the 7 council fires. Land, water, sky. Land where the water reflects the sky. Those 3 elements are necessary, not just for native people, but for all life. Everyone needs land and water and air. We all need that. That's a necessary thing. Just because native people are protesting doesn't mean that they're just protesting for their own rights. They're protesting for everyone's right. Do you not drink water? Do you not live on the land? Do you not breathe air? Show me a man who doesn't do that, and I'll follow him, you know. But anyways, in 2021, this liberal Minnesota nice government decided that they were going to build a Canadian pipeline, tar sands from Alberta, Canada, through northern Minnesota. And they did it because we got together and defeated their other Canadian pipeline called the Trans-Canada Keystone XL pipeline that was supposed to ship heavy crude tar sands from Alberta, Canada, on stolen Indigenous land, through stolen Indigenous land, down to the Gulf of Mexico to be refined. The reason why they wanted to do this is because both Canada and the United States were trying to destroy the Venezuelan oil economy, because they felt that Venezuela was a recalcitrant socialist government. Venezuela has the largest oil reserves in the world. So not only are we going to drill our economies out of the gutter by destroying indigenous lands, we're also going to attack other countries' sovereignty and their oil economies by drilling ourselves out of the gutter. And that was something that we were talking about. When the Keystone XL pipeline was being proposed, it was being proposed through states that were not like Minnesota. The politics in the US is very extreme. There's extreme right-wingers, right? Trump people, we call them Trump people. All the people who controlled the governments along the pipeline route, they were all right-wing Trump people. Some of them are to the right of Trump. They're more fascist than Trump. But we beat them. Native people beat them. We got together and we're a minority. How did we beat all these Republican governments to stop a pipeline? You know, because the Republicans, their slogan is drill baby drill. How could we beat Republican governors, but we can't beat a Democratic liberal government in Minnesota, which I'll get to in a second? It's because we looked around to see who our allies were. There's no way we could have done it by ourselves. We looked to working poor white people in those states. They're not benefiting from it. They're not hiring them for jobs. These are all union jobs they're importing from the outside. The unions didn't like it because the local unions didn't like it because they weren't getting hired. So the unions were on our side. And some of the white settlers who had their ancestors who had stolen our land were on our side, because they realized there would be no future for them if they couldn't drink water. But we went to these so-called unlikely allies for support. And we built our coalition, and we defeated these Republican governments who tried to build this pipeline through our land. That was in 2016. It, carried into the Trump years and into Biden. But then come 2021, when they decided, well, we can't build it through Lakota land because they're just a bunch of hostile, militant Native people. They decided they're going to go through the liberal, nice government of Minnesota, who the governor at the time was Tim Walz. He's still the governor. Now he's the vice president candidate with Kamala Harris. And they built the pipeline. They rerouted the Canadian pipeline through northern Minnesota, through Ojibwe and Dakota lands, And they said it's because of jobs. And if you drove on the, if you drove through those territories and you turned the radio on, it was Enbridge, the pipeline company, is creating jobs. Well, whose jobs? A lot of them were, outside union people that came in. But the people in the north, the Ojibwe and Anishinaabe people, were throwing up blockades because they had jobs too. Minnesota is called the land of 10,000 lakes because there's lakes with rice and food that grows on them that Anishinaabe people and Dakota people have taken care of for generations. It's created their local economy. They live off the land. They don't call them farmers because Indigenous people, it's the racist colonial attitude is we don't farm, but basically they're farmers. They're harvesting rice every single year, taking care of the water, making sure it's fresh. And it's going back into the local economy. That's what their seasonal cycle is. Now, all of that is threatened, but nobody talked about those jobs. And when the unions came through, the Indigenous people set up a picket. And they said, not our waters and, not our rising economy. So every single day when those unionized pipeline workers went to work, what were they doing? They were crossing a picket line. Because Indigenous people and our allies, and even the unions that had supported us, set up a picket line. But we were betrayed by our liberal friends in the government, who made a deal with a pipeline company, who started paying off the police. And this is all documented. They did it in a legal way. So the pipeline company was basically hiring the local police force to police us, to break up the encampments, and to arrest people. And so we lost that struggle. But it shows you that even when the odds are stacked against you and they say, oh, you don't have any friends in Republican places or right-wing states, you can still win. And it also shows you how those who are supposed to be your friends can also betray you. But your strength is not allying yourself with these two ruling class parties. The strength has always been allying yourself with the people. The humble people of the earth, as we like to say, because that's what we are. We're not owners. We're not bosses. We're workers. And so when we say no to stolen land, we also mean no to stolen wages, because we know that our livelihoods were sacrificed to build these economies. That lives in the global south, in Latin America, were sacrificed because foreign mining companies from Canada and the United States went and pillaged and plundered those lands. That this economy is in a permanent state of need for so-called migrant temporary laborers. But they're not allowed to be permanent. Why? To cheapen their lives, to make them expendable, just like they make Indigenous people's lives and lands expendable. So you can't separate them. You can't say workers' rights are not Indigenous rights. They're the exact same rights. Native people are part of the working class, as you are part of the working class. So an attack on you is also an attack on us. That's the way we have to see it. Otherwise, we're not going to win. I think I'm out of time, but I just want to wrap up with just thinking about this moment in time. And I'm really happy to see everyone here. I'm really happy to see this encampment. I'm happy to hear that there are more connections being made with the Indigenous communities who are from this territory, from this land. Because when they talk about, I don't know if the Canada has the same saying, but in the United States, they call it a nation of immigrants. And it's not a nation of immigrants. What do immigrants do? They come to assimilate into the legal, social, political order. Well, before Canada and the United States, what was there? they will say, oh, these were, it was tribalism and savagery, that it was lawless. I said, no, we had our own laws. We had our own customs. We were used to people coming into different territories. Yeah, we fought. Yeah, we made mistakes. Yeah, we were bad relatives to our neighbors, Yeah, maybe we didn't treat the environment great all the time. We didn't walk out of the history books. We were part of history. We made mistakes and we acknowledged those. But the Europeans that came over didn't come to assimilate into our laws and customs. They came to replace them. They came to destroy, to replace, to build anew. And I think that's important because it demystifies whatever narrative Canada, the United States tells about themselves, about being open, liberal, multicultural democracies. When the people who are originally from here, who have the original laws, the original customs, the original language, have to boil their water to this day just to survive, who have some of the highest rates, I don't know what they are in Canada, but in the United States, our life expectancy dropped by 7 years, just in the last 2 years. 7 years. The median life expectancy in where I was born and raised is 57 years old for a Native person. 57 years old. This system is built on our death and immiseration, continued exploitation. And it's only when we look beyond what they offer us. Yeah, come on stage, do a land acknowledgement. Why we pollute your land. Yeah, come on stage, do a land acknowledgement. Why we take your children away. We'll say, oh, I'm sorry. That's my Canadian accent. Oh, I'm so sorry. We hear that a lot from Canada, even sometimes in the United States. But sorry doesn't give us the wages you stole back. Sorry doesn't give us our homes back. Sorry doesn't give us our lands back. Sorry doesn't give us our children back. Sorry doesn't undo centuries of trauma. What undoes those things? It's the power that's in this encampment right now. That's what undoes it. Struggle. And whenever I think of encampment, I get like I don't know what you call it, a trigger, I guess is what they call it, because I was in Standing Rock and like the smell of tear gas and pepper spray like comes back whenever I walk into an encampment like this, because we're tear gas and pepper sprayed so much. But I saw some of my relatives, some of them who struggled with alcohol and drugs and addictions, cycles of violence, go into an encampment like this and get sober, line out, become the person that they wanted to be. And we have, for Native communities, we have all of these programs. I call it Program Itis. There's a program for everything, but it doesn't target that one issue. Right? Only we can solve that issue by coming together and trying to build the world that is necessary for all of us, not just for Native people. Like we need to get out of this siloed mentality, thinking that it's just immigrant rights and Native rights. No, they're one and the same. And that's what we have to wake up in the morning tomorrow and think about and meditate about. That this struggle doesn't just end, when we win, when we make a concession or we get a concession from the government. But how do we continue to make this world more livable for the future generations? Because what they're doing to you, they're going to do to somebody else, and they're going to do it worse. So you have to stop it now. Before you have to be good ancestors right now to those future generations, so that they can look back and say, hey, somebody made a place for me here. And I don't have to fight this fight. They set an example to show like how we win is when we build power. So that's all I want to say. I do want to just offer, like, I'm not from Canada. I don't know all the laws. I don't know all the things. It's very similar to the United States, but in many ways there's a lot of racism here, and it needs to be acknowledged, because I'm not on social media very much, but whenever I go onto Twitter, I was shocked at the right wing and liberal depiction of Brampton, because they say it's a slum. There's people who, are out on the streets defecating. That's dehumanizing. That's dehumanizing. And struggle makes us, through this struggle, we're not just combating stereotypes, we're becoming better human beings. And so that's what I want to offer you all is, through this struggle, I am with you as an individual, but as a collective, we have to fight together, because otherwise we have everything to lose.